Y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All coming to you from snowy Salt Lake City. It just keeps on snowing around here, so it's been great skiing, actually kind of blizzard conditions today. But anyway, I am going to attempt to do something kind of insane, which is do the full self-driving beta 11.3.1 release notes in one take. So forgive in advance, there will be bumbles. I am sure I will do my best. I've tried to set this thing up properly. So this is from Not a Tesla App. I will leave a link, of course, to the to the original in the description, so you can check it out yourself. There is a bunch of stuff, limited access, a bunch of things that, they just talk about, basically saying that it's beta software. And of course, I did a video just yesterday on the over-the-air update, which is actually a separate section from full self-driving beta release notes. They talk about that. So, check that out up here or at the end of the video. I will leave a link to that at the end of the video. So basically, this is 11.3.1, and I went back and forth and looked at 11.3 here to see if I could see differences, because I was like, oh, there probably won't be that much differences. And I've done a video on this, of course, in the past also, but there are a ton of differences between the two. So it's definitely worth talking about this on its own. So to get, and the reason why we're talking about this, of course, is that folks like Chuck Cook, Dirty Tesla, Homar's Catalog, I think, who else? There's a bunch of people right now who have a bunch of videos that are out. They've just put out a whole bunch. So you can go watch people drive it around. I hopefully will see it soon, but Elon said that there will probably be another point release before it goes very wide release. So I don't know whether I will count in the sort of wide release or whether I'll count in the very, very wide release. So anyway, we will see. Right now I'm in Utah, so I don't even have access to my car, so it doesn't matter as much at this point anyway. So anyway, the release notes, the number one thing is old hat at this point, because we've talked about it so many times. I don't even know how many videos I've done on full self-driving beta 11 release notes, because they keep changing every time. But anyway, the most important thing is the single stack to rule them all. If you haven't seen that video, I go into a lot more detail about that. But basically, it's taking, as it says here, a 4-year-old stack, right? Which is what the current legacy highway stack is for. It's not even full self-driving beta on the highway. Until this version, it's actually just enhanced navigate on autopilot on the highway. So it's the same thing it's been for a long time. And it works fine. It's worked very, very well, but it's also mechanical. It has problems under certain circumstances and stuff like that. So anyway, that's the big part about this. That's the whole brand new, brand spanking thing. And that's very, very cool. And there's a lot of other stuff, however, that has also been updated as well. So let's look at this. I actually thought this was the same as the 11.3 release, but it's different. So it's actually an update to the 11.3 release notes. But this says improved recall for close by cut-in cases by 15%. Particularly for large trucks and high yaw rate scenarios, through an additional 30,000 auto-labeled clips mined from the fleet. Additionally, expanded and tuned dedicated speed control for cut-in objects. So, close by cut-in cases. Recall, if you want to look at this, let's pop over to Wikipedia for a second, which I have it on the wrong spot right there. There we go. Precision and recall, we're going to make use of this several times today, so I figured I might as well just have it as its own thing. So recall has a bunch to do with false negatives. So that would mean situations where a Tesla might identify something which is not real as real. So it would identify something as not there that is there. That's a false negative. So anyway, you want to make sure that you don't have those under many circumstances. So anyway, the recall for this, improved recall for close cut-ins cases. So this would be reducing the false negative instances. So this is cases where the car is actually cutting in, but you're not seeing that, if I'm thinking about that correctly, right? Need to make sure that I'm thinking my way through all of this stuff. It's the end of a very long day here. So anyway, a false negative would be the car is cutting in and it doesn't identify it as that. So that would be improved recall, means reducing the number of false negatives in that case by 15%, which is great. Also, particularly for large trucks, which is an exceptionally important instance because they are big and you don't want to mistakenly think that they're not cutting in on you when they are, and high yaw rate scenarios. And that would be, so again, longitudinal, and then yaw is turning like this. So that would be where a car turns very rapidly and goes into your lane. So that would be a high yaw rate scenario. And the way they've done that is auto-labeled clips mined from the fleet, which is pretty standard practice for Tesla, and expanded and tuned dedicated speed control for cut-in objects. So I assume that's another neural network or something. Some sort of sub-neural network has been tuned for this particular purpose is what my guess is. It's a little unclear what that is, to me at least. All right, next up, improve the position of ego in wide lanes. So that would be where you're driving and there's a lot of space around you. It's not narrow. By biasing in the direction of the upcoming turn to allow other cars to maneuver around ego. So ego is your car. That's what's called the ego car. And what this means is if you've got room, so, you've got your car driving here and you've got a lot of room on both sides of the lane and you're going to make a turn. Currently what happens is, in the older versions, is the car stays directly in the middle as it turns. That is a very uncomfortable situation, both for us human beings who are in the car, but also for other cars around you. I see a lot of other cars oftentimes when I'm in that scenario making a turn and they're like, hey, why are you, right in the middle when you should be easing over? So anyway, what this is going to do is bias towards the inside of the turn. So it goes like this, so that if other cars, kind of go into your lane or close to into your lane, they will be more comfortable doing that. So generally speaking, as you turn, you kind of, human beings bias the inside of the turn. That is just good driving. So anyway, that should make things feel a lot better. It should allow other cars to feel more comfortable around you, all of that kind of stuff. So that's a big, big plus. Next up, improved handling during scenarios with high curvature or large trucks by offsetting in lane to maintain safe distance to other vehicles on the road and increase comfort. So this is similar. I think these two are relatively related to each other, this one and this one. So here we have a scenario with high curvature. So again, road is turning rapidly, or large trucks, by offsetting in the lane to maintain a safe distance to other vehicles on the road. So in my mind, it doesn't really say whether we're talking longitudinal or latitudinal, but I think we're talking latitude here. So we're talking about, again, if your car is centered in the lane and there's a big truck right on the side of you, I guarantee you know what I'm talking about. You feel really uncomfortable that that truck is hanging out there, and what you'd rather do is kind of bias over towards this side of the lane so that you're further away from a big truck, especially in a high curvature scenario. You don't want to be dead center. So these things are all enabled by the better neural network system. The old version on the highway was very much stuck, and even the full self-driving beta was very much stuck about dead center lane centering. So this is allowing it to basically drive more like a human being. It should increase comfort a lot. It should reduce the number of disengagements that we humans feel we have to do, because we're not stuck in a situation where we're like, whoa, that's really, really encroaching on me. I'm going to disengage and bias the inside of the turn. So all of this should reduce the number of disengagements and make us feel much more comfortable about everything. All right. Next up, improved behavior for path blockage lane change in dense traffic. Ego will now maintain more headway in blocked lanes to hedge for possible cans in dense traffic. I don't know. I'm assuming that means gaps, but I don't know if that's a word that I just don't know. I mean, obviously I know what the word can is from like a can of soup or something, but I'm not exactly sure how they're using it here. But anyway, so path blockage lane changes in dense traffic. I'm assuming that what they're talking about is if you've got multiple lanes of traffic, let's say that just a simple case where you've got two lanes and one lane has 15 cars in it waiting at a stoplight or just going slowly or something, and the other lane only has 2 or 3 cars in front of it. The obvious thing to do to be more efficient would be to lane change into the lane that has more room so that you can move up further to sort of, maximize the amount of road that everyone is using together. So it seems like that's what they're talking about, is that the car is going to maintain more distance between it and the car in front of it, so that if it decides it needs to change out into another lane, it will be able to do that more easily. So again, as a human who has driven before, you're probably familiar with this. If you, get yourself right up against a car in front of you, and then all of a sudden there's like a whole lane that's empty, you can't pull out because you can't, turn into the car. So it's the best way to do this is to maintain a little bit of a gap between you and the car in front of you, so that if that scenario occurs, you can just turn out very quickly and get into the more empty lane. So that's, again, I'm doing my best here. I think that that's exactly what they're talking about here. I don't know, again, what the word cans is. I don't know if that's a misspelling for something else. or if that's just a technical term that I don't understand. But my understanding of this is that it will maintain more distance between itself and the car in front of it, so it can go into another lane if it needs to, or if it deems that that would be the most efficient thing to do. Next up, improved lane changes in dense traffic scenarios by allowing higher acceleration during the alignment phase. This results in more natural gap selection to overtake adjacent lane vehicles very close to ego. So the basics of what we're talking about here is, again, you're talking about 2 lanes plus of traffic that's very, very high, density. So there's lots and lots of cars there. And what you want to do is move into a faster lane, but it's a question of, so let's say this one lane is moving 45 miles an hour and the other one's moving 55 miles an hour. It's the question of where do you select that gap so that you can turn your car into it and accelerate into that other lane and maintain traffic flow in the other lane. And again, this is a complicated thing. Many humans are not very comfortable with this. There are a lot of people who will just kind of like wait in a slower traffic lane rather than move over because they're scared to do this. So it's an advanced driver move. How's that? But I think that what we're talking about here is the ability to accelerate faster will mean that you're not being a jerk to the people behind you. I was trying to think of a family-friendly word there. You're not being a jerk to the people behind you. What you don't want to do is pull out and then be going 45 miles an hour and then very slowly accelerate to 55, because the person behind you is going to get really mad that they had to slam the brakes on because you were going slowly, even though you could fit in that gap. So higher acceleration during the period of time when it's moving into that lane and accelerating up to speed to match the other traffic. So again, this should make us humans in the ego car feel more comfortable, and it should make other people around us respect us more as drivers and not think that we're jerks. So these are all very, very good things. All right. Next up, made turns smoother by improving the detection consistency between lanes, lines, and road edge predictions. This was accomplished by integrating the latest version of the lane guidance module into the road edge and lines network. Okay. So let's start with the second half first. So apparently there was a road edge and lines network. So that would be edge of the road, don't go here, and then lines, which is places that, divide up the lanes and things like that. I guess the lines are probably things like center lines and stuff, but anyway, then there's the dotted lines for lanes in between. And so what they've done is they've integrated all 3 of these things into one neural network stack. And the upshot of this is that this will make turns smoother because all 3 of these things, so the edge of the road, the middle of the road, the kind of line, and then the lanes are all in one network stack now, so they don't have to communicate with each other, where of course there's a chance of miscommunication. So that will allow the car to maintain, because it's only operating under one neural network when it's considering making a turn or a lane change or something, it will now be able to do that in a more smooth manner because it's not having to transfer this data or negotiate between different neural networks. So that should be a really, really big deal, and that should help a lot. Next up, improved accuracy for detecting other vehicles' moving semantics. How's that for a sentence? Improved precision by 23% for cases where other vehicles transition to driving, and reduced error by 12% for cases where autopilot incorrectly detects its lead vehicle as parked. These were achieved by increasing video context in the network, adding more data to these scenarios, and increasing the loss penalty for control-relevant vehicles. Okay, so first of all, let's just remember real quickly that precision is all about false positives. So improving that is getting rid of false positives. So just keep that in mind. So what we're doing is we're understanding. So semantics, it's kind of an interesting way of using this, but basically it's understanding the intentionality of the other vehicles. So very often if you're driving down the road, let's say that there's a post office truck, a mail truck or something that stops at people's mailboxes and drops off mail, you have to make a decision, semantic decision, I guess would be the way they would put this. That's not exactly the word I would use, but anyway, you have to make a decision about what that person's intention is. Are they going to be staying at that mailbox for a few seconds so you can safely drive around them, or are they just about to accelerate up to go to the next one where you should wait behind and then, move at a different time? Many, many other scenarios like that, but that's what we're looking at. So it's trying to figure out the intentionality of other cars. This is really, really complicated, right? But anyway, they've improved precision, which is reducing the amount of false positives by 23% for cases where other vehicles are transitioning to driving. So it's not seeing cases where it thinks people are about to become drivers. In other words, going from parking to driving. That would be false positive. So it's reduced the amount of that. So it's not freaking out when it doesn't need to. So that's actually a good thing. And then also it's reduced the error by 12% for cases where autopilot incorrectly detects its lead vehicle as parked. So this is also a situation. This is kind of the opposite situation, whereas you're behind a car and you think that it's parked and then it like tries to move around it. And I've actually had this happen on several occasions with Teslas, mostly in earlier versions of the full self-driving, but basically it'd be behind somebody and it would all of a sudden just go like and start to pull out as if the car was parked. They were just stopped for some reason. Maybe there was a person crossing the street, maybe they were in a long line of traffic, whatever. Those kinds of things are not good. Obviously, you don't want to just pull into the other lane and just assume that that person is parked when they're not. So that's also very, very good. And then they achieved this, I believe, saying increasing video context in the network, I think might be longer clips. So what they're doing is they're taking their training clips of human beings driving, and instead of maybe it being like 5 seconds or 10 seconds, maybe they've increased that to 20 seconds. This is just a guess. I mean, video context seems like that's what they're saying here. But anyway, so what that would be is they'd be able to give the training network more context. Say like, you know, if we double the amount of video for each clip, then you can see that the computer can see what's going on for longer, and it has a better sense of what's actually happening. So again, I think that that's what they're doing. Anyway, more data, obviously, always more data, and increasing the loss penalty for control relevant vehicles. So what that means is if as it's training, it makes a mistake, it's actually what they've done is they've increased the loss penalty. So it's actually getting punished more, right? It's getting a slap on the hand. It's getting a bigger slap on the hand for getting it wrong. And so that should, of course, help it to train better because it's going to try to optimize for that. All right, next up. Almost to the end here. There's actually a couple of things after these release notes that's worth talking about, but I want to get through the release notes first, obviously. All right, next up is extended maximum trajectory optimization horizon, resulting in smoother control for high curvature roads and faraway vehicles when driving at highway speeds. So this, I believe, has to do with occupancy networks. I think this would make sense, and multi-resolution occupancy networks. But anyway, it's what they're looking at is high curvature roads. It's looking further ahead. That's the TLDR for this one is it's looking further ahead. It's saying, oh, here's some vehicles that are really, really far away, or here's a high curvature road. And instead of looking at it only close up, it's actually projecting out maybe multiple hundreds of meters to figure out what's going on, which allows the car to, you know, drive in a more smooth manner than it might otherwise be able to do. So this should be really, really helpful. Next up, improved driving behavior next to row of parked cars in narrow lanes, preferring to offset and stay within the lane instead of unnecessarily lane changing away or slowing down. So two options right now. Again, you've got all these cars parked and you're going down a narrow road and you don't have a ton of room. What do you do in that situation? Generally speaking, what you want to do is move as far over into that lane as possible so that you're far away in case somebody opens a door or a kid runs out from behind the car or something like that. So that's the basic thing, but you don't want to then, go over into another lane, or you don't want to slow down to a stop because you're paralyzed or something. So I don't know how they do that. They don't really say, but that actually should be very, very helpful, obviously. Next up, this will be very helpful. Improved back-to-back lane change maneuvers through better fusion between vision-based localization and course map lane counts. So what you're looking for, the goal here is you want to change 2 lanes over, right? Not just one. You want to go do like that over 2 because you got to get in a left turn lane or something like that. And what you need to do is do that more smoothly, not one and then wait 10 seconds and do another. And by that time you're past the intersection, right? So you want something like that. And the way they've achieved this is fusion between the vision system, right? The whole vision system that Tesla worked on so hard, and the very, very high resolution vision and understanding of the world. And they're attaching that to the course map data, which would be like, Google Maps or something like that, where they're putting them together and going like, oh, I'm in the far right lane. I've got to get over 2 lanes to do something like this, to make a left-hand turn. And here's what I see around me. So they're fusing these 2 things together. This should go a long way. I've always talked about midterm planning being a a big bugaboo with Tesla's full self-driving beta, and this should help a lot. It's that merging of the vision system, the second to second with the course map data, the bigger picture data. That will be a huge help if that actually works, and I can't wait to test this out myself. That should be pretty amazing. All right, next up, we've seen this before with 11.3. Oh, actually, we haven't. Sorry, this is a whole different thing. We saw the speech feedback thing, but they don't even have that in this version of the notes. Added text blurbs in the user interface to communicate upcoming maneuvers that full self-driving beta plans to make. Also improved the visualization of upcoming slowdowns along the vehicle's path. Chevrons render at varying opacity and speed to indicate the slowdown intensity, and a solid line appears at locations where the car will come to a stop. So, text blurbs to let you know what the car is thinking. Basically, all of this kind of stuff is like, how can Tesla communicate to us, the drivers of the car, what the car is thinking? And that is really important, because one of the problems that we have is the car does stuff and it'll turn a turn signal on or make a move or do something. We don't know why. So providing communication where it says, this is what I'm thinking about. I'm coming to a stop because I see a red light. Or other things like, or the chevrons where it's showing like these chevrons. The chevrons are like a bunch of V's in a row. And so if you see V's and they start getting faster and faster and brighter, I guess that means that it's going to decelerate more and more rapidly. So anyway, these are very, either through text or through graphics, really cool ways of talking to the driver of the car and saying, this is what the car is thinking. That should help us feel much more comfortable. If we know what the car is thinking, then we can determine whether it's thinking the right thing or not. And by the way, they don't have this in this, but you do now have audio feedback. I saw Chuck Cook do this, where you can actually give like a little, you can talk to the car and you can say, oh, in this situation, the car thought there was a parked car over here. It wasn't a parked car. That person was moving. It was misbehaving. And that will allow the Tesla to then take the clip of the something went wrong and then obviously do some sort of speech to text sort of thing and randomize it and get out of that what the driver of the car thought was a mistake, why it was wrong. So that should help them fix problems more quickly, because they will then understand it's not just a disengagement. It's why did we disengage? So that should be very helpful. Okay. Next up, we get precision and recall. Improve the recall and precision of object detection, notably reducing the position error of semi-trucks by 10%. That's really a big deal. Semi-trucks tend to wiggle around a lot when you drive next to them. Increasing the recall and precision of crossing vehicles over 100 meters away by 3% and 7% respectively, and increasing the recall of motorbikes by 5%. This was accomplished by implementing additional quality checks in our 2 million video clip auto-labeled dataset. Let's start at the end of this. This is really interesting. This was accomplished by implementing additional quality checks on our 2 million video clip auto-labeled data set. So what they're saying is, I think the quality checks means that they just had people look through this and realize that maybe there were badly labeled videos that then were causing the training to not work. So here we've got, just take a situation of the recall of motorbikes, right? Recall again being false negatives. You really don't want to not see a motorcycle. That would be a very bad thing. So increasing the recall of motorbikes by 5% is a huge advantage. But what might have happened is there might have been, in these 2 million clips, either mislabeled or somehow bad quality data. Maybe they're just 10 or 20 of these clips where the motorcycle was not identified in the clip, and that caused the training to stall out. And so I think what they're saying is they looked back through 2 million video clips, which is insanity. And by looking back through that, they were able to improve the quality and thereby increase the recall of motorbikes by 5%, also to reduce the position error of semi-trucks by 10%, increase the recall and precision, so false negatives and false positives, of crossing vehicles over 100 meters away by 3% and 7% respectively. So again, in labeled data, a human being that might have been labeling this data, something 100 meters away would be pretty small, and a person might miss it. So there might be a car that goes across 150 meters away in a video clip, and the human being just whatever, just didn't see it, or maybe the auto labeling thing didn't see it or something like that. That produces bad quality data, which is a negative cycle, which causes the car to have worse performance about the whole thing. So anyway, all of this stuff should be really helpful and improve things a lot. And it sounds like it was just done through really hard, sloggy work. So good for the Tesla team for working on that. Ugh, must have been really, really hard. Okay, and then finally, reduced false offsetting around objects in wide lanes near intersections by improving object kinematics modeling in low speed scenarios. I believe this again is something like a garbage can, a parked car. Maybe it says objects. It doesn't really say humans, but just things in the road in low speed scenarios to make sure. Again, false offsetting would be like if you went really far around something where you didn't need to. So maybe you've got a wide lane, the car's already in the middle of the lane, and there's a garbage can on the edge of the lane. You don't need to go all the way around the garbage can because there's already plenty of room around that. But I guess the car was tending to do that more in the past. So anyway, that should be helpful. It's one of those situations where I don't personally have a lot of experience with that particular one, but for people who do, hopefully it will be very helpful for that as well. All right, and then a few other things. The over-the-air recall, again, I did the video on that yesterday, so definitely check that out if you want. Driving visualization improvements, that's cool. Here's an interesting little point here. And I think I'm reading this right, but I'm not sure. So full self-driving beta suspension means if the car, says you're bad, you weren't paying attention or something like that, and the car takes away your full self-driving for the remainder of the drive, that is 1 strike, and you get 5. After 5 of those, you lose your autopilot, your full self-driving beta privileges. But the interesting thing here is this last sentence, and that is the FSD beta feature can only be removed per this suspension method and will be unavailable for approximately 2 weeks. So what they're saying is they won't remove your full self-driving beta feature for other reasons. I don't know what those would be. But even more importantly, if you do get strikes, if you get 5 strikes and you strike out, it's only unavailable for approximately 2 weeks. So I think I'm reading that correctly. That's actually great news for people who've managed to rack up like 5 strikes or something, and that really sucks because they have to wait for who knows how long before they get it back again. So this at least is setting a timer on that, if I'm reading this correctly, and that means if you do lose it, you only lose it for 2 weeks. So much better than it could have been in the past. And then this one is very cool too. Now, by the right scroll wheel, if you push it back and forth, you'll see that it changes the FSD profile from chill to average to assertive. And this is interesting because this is actually the thing that the same control on the highway was what sets your offset distance to cars in front of you from 2 to 7, right? So you could be 2 car lengths or whatever, but you'd be some distance. But if you set it to 7, it was much, much further. So I guess now you've only got 3 levels of control, but basically chill will give you a big amount of buffer to the car in front of you, average a smaller amount, and assertive very small distance to the car in front of you, probably like 2, 4, and 7, something like that with the old numbers. But obviously with full self-driving beta, you don't need to worry about the 2 to 7 settings anymore because that's like the old legacy sort of software. So that's actually really, really cool to see that has been adjusted and updated. So that's awesome. And then we also have, here we go. You can see a live view of your vehicle's cabin camera while you are within the vehicle. So I guess it's more or less to see what it's capturing. Maybe you can look at your kids and see what they're doing in the back seat, make sure they're not doing something they're not supposed to be. I'm not sure. So anyway, so you can now go to control service and tap on preview and actually see the interior of the cabin. It might be something along the lines of like, if you're worried about what the cabin camera is seeing in the background, you could sort of preview it. So anyway, I don't know exactly why that would be the most interesting thing in the world while you're in the car, but it's really cool that it is there. All right, wow. I feel like I just did a Zelda speed run or something like that in one fell swoop. So forgive me for any of the mistakes that I might have made, but I hope this was actually quite valuable. I think there is a ton of new stuff in the release notes, and of course the over-the-air update recall is also part of this, but it's a separate thing. So anyway, let me know what you all think about this, and as soon as I get a hold of the full self-driving version 11.3.2 perhaps, or .1, who knows, I might actually get .1 at some point. But anyway, I will definitely do a test drive on the highway to check it out and see. In the meantime, check out the myriad of other YouTube videos that are out there. I hope this has been helpful for you all. If it has, please do like, you know the basic stuff, like the video so other people can find it, consider subscribing, all of that kind of stuff. Everybody have a lovely day, and I will be skiing by the time this is released, more or less, I think. All right, everybody, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.